Joining us from North Carolina is a member of the Rockets 95 championship team, Chucky Brown. And thank you so much for joining us on the show. And I'm sure Chucky Rockets fans are wondering what you're up to these days. I know you're an SC State alum. What brought you back to Carolina?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I came back to North Carolina because this is where I went to college at. And, most of my friends are here. And I love Houston and the people that I connected with down in Houston. There are only two places that I would live, and that was North Carolina or Houston. So I came back to North Carolina. My mom is here. My family's here. So I just came back and, just loving it, just enjoying it, really.
Boy, it's hard to believe, but it's been 20 years since that championship run here in Houston. And actually, it was 20 years ago at the beginning of this month, February 1st, when you signed that first 10-day contract. Then the Clyde Drexler trade happens, and Otis Thorpe is involved. So a couple of weeks later on the famous Valentine's Day trade, and that's what really opened up your role on the team, right?
Right. Well, I was in Houston on a 10-day. I was on my first 10-day, and Otis was there. And I had known Otis before because I had been in the league before, and I had talked to most of the guys on the team I had known. I played against Kenny in college. I knew Sam, I knew Robert, I knew those guys. So it was really familiar for me to be there. And then on my second 10-day is when the trade happened. And it opened up a role for me, especially because Carl Herrera, who was on the team at the time, he had gotten injured. Once they made the trade when Otis got traded, that opened up more room for me to be able to play, and myself and Pete Chilcutt. So that was a big moment for us, or for me, in my career anyway.
When you think about the championship run, what are the first memories that come to mind for you? More specifically, are there ones that come to mind that we may not have seen as fans, but you remember from the behind the scenes or in the locker room?
Dream had like a blood clot in his leg or something like that. And I think Vernon had gotten ill. Something happened to Vernon. He was injured. And it was just like we had went through a period where there was a lot of injuries. And that also enabled me to play a lot. But I think that part of the year where everybody was getting hurt, guys that, like Tim Bro was another guy who didn't see much playing time, but was able to get out on the floor and play a little bit. And, Pete, CJ, Charles Jones, we weren't accustomed to those big minutes, but we had to get them, and that helped us, when we got into the playoffs, because we played a lot of meaningful minutes during the season against quality teams like Phoenix, Utah, and San Antonio. So when we got into the playoffs and had to see them again, it was no big deal.
There are a couple of things that stand out in the playoffs that we all remember. Of course, the Mario Elie shot, the kiss of death, and then, of course, when Hakeem dominated over David Robinson after David Robinson gets the MVP award. But there's one thing that I always remember, too, is when the Rockets were down 3-1 and Clyde Drexler was ill, being able to go to Phoenix and win that game, that was a huge one. People forget about it a lot.
Right. Yeah, that was a big game. That was where I had, I think, my best game of the playoffs. I think we ended up winning in overtime. And, I just looked at it as an opportunity. When somebody goes down, there's an opportunity for another guy to step up. And I just, before that game, I remember thinking, Clyde's not going to play, so, why not me? Why not I be the guy to step up and, do something good for the team? So I think I had my best playoff game in that game 5. And it was scary because, Clyde wasn't feeling well. We knew that going in. So, we just, like I said, I just felt like, why not me? So, I had my best game. And that was, I think after that was when Charles Barkley had so much to say about me as far as I didn't belong in the league or some crazy mess he said. But, that was a big moment for myself and for the team.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Hakeem. I know RG wants to ask you about how he compares to the other guys in a second. But the first question I had on Hakeem was just describe what it's like to play with Hakeem Olajuwon. When you tell your grandkids, what are you going to tell them about playing with Dream?
How easy it was because, you could get beat on defense, and Dream was there to help you, and we knew that, as long as we helped him, he would continue to help us. So once you got beat, you knew he was coming, so you knew to get to his man so that, his man wouldn't get an easy dunk or layup because then he'd be upset, and then, a big guy would be hesitant to come and help then. If nobody's going to help him, why should I, risk helping you? So I think that was a good thing about that team, was that we helped each other. But, playing with Dream, he just made things so much easier. And my field goal percentage was probably the best of my career while I was playing with Houston, because Dream would get double teamed a lot, and I would just cut to the basket, and Dream would just drop the ball off, and I was getting layups and dunks. So, he just made it so easy.
Everybody in Houston, we're all partial to Hakeem Olajuwon and his greatness, but it seems like in recent years here, been talk about you played against Shaquille O'Neal and even big men like David Robinson and now Tim Duncan with all his championships. Kind of Hakeem gets lost a little bit in the shuffle there. Do you feel that he was the best you ever played with or against? And how do you compare him to those other big men at the time?
I definitely think he was the best guy that I played with. And I played with a lot of guys playing on 12 different teams. And I think Dream was by far the best guy that I played with. And as far as the comparisons, Shaquille O'Neal was a great player. He was a powerful player, but Shaquille O'Neal didn't block the shots like Dream, and I don't think Shaquille O'Neal rebounded like Dream, and I thought Dream was simply just a better all-around player. Shaq was probably the more powerful, stronger guy, but as far as overall player, shot blocking, rebounding, passing, and all that kind of stuff, I think there's no comparison, with Dream as far as that goes. I think Dream is by far better.
Yeah, you just mentioned it. You were on 12 different teams. You hold the NBA record for most teams played for. There's 3 other guys tied for the record with you. And you also played for some of the great coaches, Lenny Wilkins, Greg Popovich, Jim Valvano, Rudy, of course. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you which was the best coach, but I'd love to know, between Jimmy V and Rudy T, who was the most animated on the sideline? Seems like there was a little bit of similarities between those two guys.
Yeah, I think Coach V was definitely, animated, and he knew how to push your buttons. He knew how to push your buttons and get the most out of you. With Rudy, it seemed like you scored. It was like you was his son scoring. He kind of like really got emotional with you and emotionally attached to you. I still remember the phone call when I got traded, and how that, I had been traded before, but no one has ever called me and given me, the respect of a top tier guy, and saying, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is what we did. And Rudy did that. So, I got nothing but respect and love for Rudy, because he respected me, and he always loved, it seemed like he always loved when I was out there playing well. Even when I wasn't playing well, he always would say, that's all right. You get him next time. He used to call me Chuck Brown. That's all right, Chuck Brown. You get him next time. You're okay. He always seemed encouraging. And, that always made you want to go that extra mile. I mean, even if you were already playing hard, you want to go that extra mile, where you jump in front of a truck for the guy or something. You just felt like that about Rudy.
Do you still keep in touch with a lot of the guys from the championship team?
I talked to quite a few. I talked to Sam Cassell most of the time, Kenny every now and then, Robert every now and then. Every blue moon talk to Robert. But Sam is the guy that I talk to most of the time. I talk to Tim Bro from time to time as well. I talked to Pete Chilcutt in the past few years. I haven't talked to Charles Jones in a while. I've lost contact with him. But those are the main guys. Mario, talk to Mario a little bit, from time to time, Mario. But Sam Cassell is the guy. Sam and I, we see each other and talk to each other and laugh and joke and, maybe go out to dinner sometime. But Sam is the guy that I talk to more than anybody. Haven't seen Dream in a while. Haven't seen Clyde in a while. But I look forward to maybe running into them at some point.
I was hoping you were going to say I talked to Kenny a lot, because Kenny might have an ear to Charles, and you were traded for Charles, of course, in that big deal. And Charles doesn't seem to like the Rockets very much. If you watch the TNT broadcast at all, what is your take on all that? Charles kind of he has not a lot of good feelings for the Rockets organization.
I think he's got a beef with the analytics part of the game, and I mean, there's a place for it. I don't think that analytics goes into building your team as far as like, when you get guys like, Damian Lillard and LeBron James, those guys are good and they can play, and there's nothing numbers can tell me about them. You know what I mean? So I disagree with the, just saying that it's total garbage. There is a place for analytics in the game, but, I think it's just crazy, the argument, it's somebody's job. So I would never try to say that somebody's job is meaningless. Every job is very meaningful. If you got a bunch of poop on the ground, there's somebody picking up that poop. So, that their job is meaningful. So, everybody has a meaningful job, whether someone else thinks so or not.
Well, since you're on Tobacco Row, we talked about Valvano. Isn't there a pretty good story about how he went about recruiting you to North Carolina State?
Oh, yeah. I got a good story. He was recruiting me, and when they did the home visit, he came down. I think it was about him and three of the coaches came down to my house, and, my mother had made food and stuff. So, we had never really been through this process before. We didn't know nothing about it. It wasn't as big as it is now. So, but he came in the house, and we were talking about basketball. My father was never a basketball guy. My father grew up, and he only had, as far as like a 8th grade education, went into the service, fought in World War II, got an education through going through the military. He was big on education. So, Coach V was talking basketball, and then he came in and started moving the furniture around. And the first place I looked was at my father, because I'm like, dude, my father is crazy. Why are you in here moving around our furniture talking about basketball? So he came in there moving the furniture around, showing us plays and stuff like that. But, my father had a good sense of humor, so he kind of just let that ride. And, it became a good relationship after that.
One of a kind. Hey, I wanted to ask you, Chucky, since you've probably been keeping up with the NBA, what do you think of where the Rockets are right now, how they've kind of transformed the organization by acquiring James Harden and Dwight Howard, and what do you think of the future outlook for the team?
Well, I love the acquisition of James Harden. I've always been a James Harden fan since he was at Arizona State. I've always been a fan of his, and I think he's becoming one of the, if not the top shooting guard in the game. He's definitely top 2 or 3. Ain't many names I could call off before his. I think the acquisition of Dwight Howard was good, but he got to get healthy, got to stay healthy in order for the team to win. I think they had been going in the right directions. I think there's been a lot of movement, though. I think one thing you have to do is you have to give guys time to gel and to be able to learn one another, because when you make a whole lot of moves, and that's a whole new chemistry that has to be developed. But I think that they've been going down a good road with some of the acquisitions. But all the movement that's taking place, might need to hold off a little bit, give guys a chance to work. And as long as you've got good people that believe in your system, you give them time to work and work things out.
Wanted to ask you one more thing before we go. I know a lot of Rockets fans might not know this. You're a New York City guy. You grew up a Jets fan. Yeah. And from what I understand, you went to Joe Namath's football camp, right, when you were a kid?
I did 2 years, yeah.
What was that like?
I mean, that was awesome, man. I got to meet Joe Namath, and it was the Joe Namath John Dockery camp. And, I got to meet Joe Namath. He came in, and it was fun. It was up in Connecticut. I had a good time. I ended up, what stopped me from playing football was I broke my fingers, and I was like, you know what? I ain't trying to break no bones doing this stuff. So I stopped playing football at a young age. But the camp was fun. I remember Richard Todd and all those guys. I mean, it was just I got pictures somewhere. I got to find. My mother probably has those pictures, but it was awesome. It was awesome to meet Joe Namath.
Yeah, that's a great story. What great memories that has. And speaking of great memories, such good memories, Chucky Brown, with you and both me and RG, and I know so many Rockets fans. It means so much to get a chance to catch up with you and talk about those memories. And we went through all the heartache, and I'm sure you heard about it over the years in Houston in the 80s with so many close calls. So we really want to thank you for bringing another championship to Houston. It was so much fun.
Well, thank you. And like I said, Houston and North Carolina, here where I'm at, Cary, North Carolina, were the only two places where I'd ever live. I enjoyed my time down there. The people I met were great down there. Even when I go through the airport down there now, there's always somebody that comes up and remembers me. So it's just, Houston's a great city, and I love my time there. Thank you so much, Chucky. Pleasure to have you on the show. All right. Don't forget, you can now listen to Houston Sports Talk weekly on 106.1 FM Tuesdays at 5 p.m. And you can hear more of our interviews at HoustonSportsTalk.net. Subscribe for free to our podcast on iTunes or with the Stitcher app.